The good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit have been doing 2 episodes a week for quite some time now, and it's all thanks to, first of all, Jason, and second of all, our patrons who allow us to add the space on our server, broadcast more, store more, share more with you, the listeners. I'm envious of those of you who have unlimited storage and media server capabilities. We pay for ours here at the C4 FAP. It ain't cheap. We thank you so much for those of you who go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and contribute at any level to say thanks, to say I want to be a part of your Slack channel conversations. I want to get exclusives. I want to get early access. I want to get ad-free access. I want to get swag. I want to get some free stuff. Whatever your reasoning is, we appreciate it at any level because it does make a difference. So from the bottom of Kyle and I and Jason's heart, thank you for contributing.
Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing the creative team of the After Realm. It is written by Michael Avon Oeming, and it is colored by his wife, Taki Soma. They are here to promote the After Realm Kickstarter campaign, issue number 5. Now, this campaign is underway, and if I got my information correctly, it'll end on October 2nd. I'm sorry, Mike. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
That is 100% correct.
Okay. All right. Mike and Taki, welcome to Comics for Fun and Profit. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We're doing all right.
Yeah, it's a good day so far.
Yeah, sunny out, can't complain.
Okay. All right.
Off New Jersey, I can complain, but
all right. So, listeners, I'm just going to give a brief history of Mike and Taki's work in comics. Now, Mike is an Eisner Award winner. His series that he co-created with Brian Michael Bendis, Powers, won the 2001 Eisner Award for Best Series. Mike has co-written with Daniel Berman a Thor story arc, issues 80 to 86, and that was titled Ragnarok. And he also did a 6-issue limited series, also, if I remember correctly, with Daniel. It's a 6-issue limited series, Stormbreaker, the saga of Beta Ray Bill. And also, too, he did the art. He was the artist on Bulletproof Monk with writer Brett Lewis. Now, that is a feature film starring Chow Yun-fat, and I've seen the movie. I love that movie. That was great. It's a real fun movie. And also, of course, recently, he was the artist on the World of Krypton miniseries that just ended, I believe, a couple months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, also to Taki, I'm going to go over Taki's comic book works in comics. She's a writer, artist, colorist, and a Hugo Award nominee. She has worked on as a colorist on United States versus Murder Inc., Dick Tracy. She has written Rapture and Synergy, and was the artist on Ironheart and Bitch Planet. And her most important and personal work to date is Sleeping While Standing. Now, I'm going to ask Taki, may I ask for the listeners, can you explain what Sleeping While Standing is about?
Oh, sure. It is about my life. It's an autobiography, and they just kind of dip into different parts of my lifetime, important parts, and I tell each story in 4 pages or less.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I'm just asking if because I'm interested in getting a copy. Where can I pick up a copy of this book?
Anywhere you can get a book or comics. So you can order it through your comic shop, or you can get it from Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or you can get it directly through the publisher, which is Avery Hill Publishing. So yeah, you can get it anywhere. You can order it through any channel that you can get a comic book or books from.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Now, Mike and Taki, did I miss anything, or do you guys want to add anything, do you guys want listeners to know, like, did I miss anything, or is there anything you guys want to focus on, any of your past works, or?
I think that's a good overview.
You covered all the good juicy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, before we begin the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Taki for setting up this interview. Taki, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, Mike, I'm going to start off with you. Where can listeners follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter all the time. It's just at Oeming. And Instagram as well is also at Oeming.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a professional Facebook page, and I think that's Michael Avon Oeming. And you'll be able to see a little drawing icon of me on there. And I don't do TikTok or any of the other stuff. I'm too old. I tried to register, and they were like, no. I was rejected.
Yeah, too old.
And then, Taki, what about you?
I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I don't post much at all, really, but I am present.
Mm-hmm.
And I am there. And it's all of them is Taki Soma.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, I'm also on YouTube, and on my YouTube channel, I have a lot of process videos and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. I got to check that out too. Okay. So, Mike, I'm going to start off this question with you. Where did you grow up?
I was born in El Paso, Texas, and off and on spent some time in Texas in my youth. But basically, I was really raised in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny. There's a movie coming out, some indie film called Funny Pictures or Funny Books,
Mm-hmm.
about a poor kid in Trenton, New Jersey, breaking into comics. And right next to Trenton was where I grew up at, and some of my earliest experiences were there. So it's going to be funny to watch that. But basically, I'm a Jersey boy, and then I,
Yes.
in my adult life, moved out here to the Northwest, and this is where the new home is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. No, but I'm going to say, yeah, that movie that you mentioned, I think I saw the trailer for that. It's like a real independent movie where.
Yeah, super indie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're excited to.
Yeah.
Yeah, to watch that.
I'm just excited to see anything that looks like where you grew up. You know how that is, right? It's like,
Yes.
Trenton buildings and the row homes and stuff, and it makes your heart shine a little bit.
And then, Taki, what about you? Where did you grow up?
Oh man, I grew up in Tokyo, Japan. I was born there. I lived there until I was 9, and then I moved to Minnesota. Read my book. It's all. But yeah, I moved to Minnesota in January of 1986. Oh my gosh,
Wow.
it was so cold.
Yes.
I can't believe I am still alive. It was so cold. Anyway, so yeah, I was in Minnesota, and most of my formative years were spent there. I lived there for 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to be with Mike in Jersey, and we were there for like less than a year.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Pacific Northwest, and it's we're not at now.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Now, Taki, what was or were your first comics? It could be the Sunday newspaper strips, manga that you read.
Oh boy. I mean, when you're born in Japan, it's everywhere. Comics are everywhere. So I don't think I have any memory of like the first comic. Yeah. So I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I will say like the most the one that I do have a strong memory of is probably Doraemon, which is like a robotic cat that and like he can like time travel, and he has all these gadgets that that he can pull up from his pocket, from his belly. Like yeah, so I think that's what I remember the most.
And what about you, Mike?
When I moved back to Texas in like the 2nd grade or 3rd grade, I forget what grade it was, I remember I couldn't assimilate very well because even though I was born in Texas, I was very much of a Northeastern snobby kind of mindset. And I didn't get it, and I couldn't assimilate at all. And I locked myself in my room, much like I do now. And I discovered comics, and some of them were these comics that just came in packets, and there was like Sergeant Rock and Ghost and stuff. But when I came back from there and moved back to Jersey, I stopped at like a 7-Eleven, and it was X-Men Annual number 9. These are some of the few comics I can mention by name, because it was Art Adams, and it was the X-Men going to Asgard. So obviously this formed so much of what I wanted to be as a comic book artist was that and New Mutants Annual 2, which was sort of the second part of those Art Adams drawing. Mike Mignola was another huge influence on me, was one of the inkers on there, as well as Terry Austin, one of the greatest inkers of all time. And between the artwork and the subject matter, that cemented who I was going to be and what I wanted to do all at once. It was like an epiphany. And there was no turning back from that. I was probably 12 at that point, 13, something.
Yeah. And also too, for listeners, because and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, because so that X-Men Annual number 9 and New Mutants number 2 is not just only a part 1 and part 2 story of just the X-Men, but they were but it also was like it dealt with mythology. It dealt with them in being in, correct me if I'm, Asgard.
Yeah.
Because I still have those 2 issues bagged.
Yeah. They, those were just so formative, because it wasn't just the art, and it wasn't. I was also just getting into superheroes and stuff. Like X-Men were cool, and of course, I really got into New Mutants because all the tricks worked on me, and I didn't know what it was. That they were young, they weren't really in power yet, and all that. And you feel that as a kid, you don't feel empowered yet. So all of those elements were there, but then there was also the curiosity of like, here was Thor's hammer, and the mention of these other gods and these places where like Loki was on top of this mountain where you could see everything throughout the realms, and what are the 9 realms and stuff like that. And through that, getting then when I would pick up cues in other media about Thor or mythology, and I realized, oh, this is a thing. This is like Greek mythology, which was my first love as a kid. Before I understood anything about superheroes or anything, I'd go to the school library when we'd have to go, and I would just go right to the mythology stuff, right to Greek mythology. So I was primed for superheroes and mythology as an early age. And this particular book, these books, just, it all came together. Like all of these elements came together to just mold me. If I have an origin story, it would probably have to just be those comics, because it branches out so many different areas from that point.
Yes. Oh yes. And because also too, on a larger scale, because those 2 annuals, also it was part of a huger story of, oh god, I'm going blank. It's the Asgardian Wars, the X-Men Alpha Flight.
Yeah. And then I went back and I got that, which I remember that was Paul Smith's work. And that's when, imagine trying to read those and not really knowing who the X-Men were. It was insane. I couldn't understand anything that was going on, and I was completely fascinated. Like when Warlock shows up, I didn't understand that he was like this alien creature who was basically made out of broken magnets, and they could just shape change and stuff. So I didn't know what the F was going on when like suddenly he turns into the Enterprise at one point, and like he's holding on to other people. I didn't know Sunspot, his character, at all, but I was fascinated by he would just turn black like a sunspot with these crackles around him, and he gets super strong. And magma just being obviously made of magma and stuff, like something obvious. Like Wolverine is so obvious and iconic, even before you know who he is, you kind of get immediately who he is. And it's a real testament to not only the characters, but Claremont's writing at the time, to not understand anything and to still be hooked into it. Everything was just firing on all pistons. There was stuff subliminally going on, iconology that subconsciously, but you were just grasped onto and sucked into. And there's just so much going on in there. I could just talk about those books and that story arc and everything for hours, because it just opened up so much for me.
Oh yes, yes, and because as soon as you mentioned, those two annuals going, it's like, oh, now I can understand where where some of the influence of the After Realm may have come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. Um. Now, Taki, I'm going to ask you. You know. Actually, no, Mike. I'm going to go back to you. Because we're already talking about mythology. May I ask, like, what? Well, you already talked about, when you go to the library, you gravitate to the mythology section. Like, what books did you read from the mythology section? Did you like read Homer? Of
No,
course,
nothing.
obviously.
Nothing heavy like that. I grew up in a house where uh, it was a disabled household. I was raised basically by my aunt and uncle. We're both legally blind, so there wasn't a lot of reading going on in the house. So a lot of it was like the picture books, right? And obviously at that point I had seen Clash of the Titans and Star Wars had been a huge influence as well. I just didn't even know what to look for. I didn't know that I was into mythology. Like even when I would make a beeline to those sections, I didn't know consciously that that's what I was even doing. I was looking at dinosaur books and anything with Greek mythology pictures in it. And then in a way, it was good that I wasn't actually reading that stuff like deeply. I think instead my own imagination had to kick in and tell me what the pictures were about. Why was there the head with snakes on it? Why was there a horse with wings on it? How does that work? Like, so instead of any of it being explained to me, I had to make it all up in my head.
Yes.
It wasn't until later as I grew up that I actually started reading some of this stuff. Mostly through Joseph Campbell studies, to be honest.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, Taki, I'm going to ask, did you read any books about like mythology, whether it's Western or Greek mythology or Japanese mythology? Did you read any of those while growing up?
Not a whole lot. No, not really. I just not really that into like history much. So like, I consumed as much as I was forced to consume, but yeah.
You were hardcore science fiction early on.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up on sci-fi. So yeah, like yeah. Oh, history, it's already happened. Let's look forward.
All right, Taki, off the cuff question, because since you're a hardcore sci-fi fan, like what are some of the sci-fi books have you read, the novels and stuff?
Well, I always bring up Cordwainer Smith. He is a very unique sci-fi writer who's unfortunately is a forgotten writer, but he was an important writer. There's an award named after him for any new sci-fi writers who comes up with like a really unique idea. So he was just a really unique sci-fi writer, and he had a really interesting life as far as I know. He's actually the writer of psychological warfare. Yeah, it's really interesting. But Cordwainer Smith, he did a lot of like short stories. So currently in print, there's like a collection of all of his short stories in somewhat of a chronological order, because even though they're short stories, they're kind of like intertwined, like a big long like 3,000-4,000 year saga. It's collected and it's called
something of man.
I can't remember it in this moment. Instrumentality for Mankind.
Oh, okay.
I always suggest anyone who's like a hardcore sci-fi reader to check that out.
Yeah, it makes any of the trippier comics writers who are known for like outlandish stuff, it makes them look really prosaic. Like it's that insane. Like I'll read some of these books or Taki start reading to me, and and I feel like I'm having a seizure, like imagination seizure. Yeah.
And currently, like modern sci-fi writers, like I am really into John Scalzi. Yeah, he did the Old Man's War series, and oh, it's so good.
Ah, okay. I have to check out some of those books. I really do. Thank you very much for those recommendations. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Taki, I'm going to start off with you on this question. Do you remember your first comic book shop that you went to? Whether it was in Japan or in Minnesota or even in New Jersey?
Japan, comic books are everywhere, so we won't count that. But my first actual comic shop was in Minnesota, and I want to say, I don't remember the name.
Oh, that's fine.
But somewhere in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
That's no problem. Mike, what about you?
For me, there's just kind of three I'll mention really quick. One was the very, very first comic book store that I walked into, and I think it was called Pyramid Comics, and that was in Trenton, but I have hardly any real memory of it. Thunder Road Comics, which was in Burlington County, was super important. That's really where I first started going to get comics. My mom would go get them for me. And it's also where I met this other comic book artist you might have heard of, Adam Hughes. He was working there behind the counter.
I haven't heard of him.
Yeah, so this is before he had broken in, and we started up a friendship, based around our art and stuff, and he just introduced me. He's like my nerd sensei. Like, he just taught me. He showed me Blade Runner. He introduced me to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Lord of the Rings, all of these things. And we had met at that store, and he was like drawing signs for the store and stuff like that. And shortly after that was when he was like trying out for gigs and stuff. So obviously that store meant a lot to me. Was Thunder Road in Burlington. And then my main store for the very longest time was called Steve's Comic Relief, which was like a chain in Jersey. And that's where I would find all my own books and really mold it myself, my own taste and stuff.
Thank you for sharing that story. That is so cool that you met Adam Hughes before, while he was working in a comic store before, and
we met each other before we were anything. We just like nerdy outcast kids, spending a lot of time by ourselves and drawing and learning from each other and stuff. And it was just some of the best times.
That is so great. Thank you very much. That is so cool. Thank you very much. Taki, I'm going to ask, how did your journey started working in comics?
I was going to school for advertising, and one day a friend of mine from school was like, I don't mean to be mean, but I don't really think you belong in the ad world. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And he's like, no, really, you talk about comics all the time. I'm just saying, I don't know if you'll be happy in the ad world. Oh, you know what? You're right. And I think literally the next day I dropped out and I started pursuing comics. And and I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm just gonna start. And that's how I started.
But I mean, for your friend to literally be really upfront and honest.
Yeah.
Because if no one had told you, I'm just thinking, if no one had said anything to you, you'd be doing advertising and stuff going, okay, yeah, all right, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm really, really grateful that he pointed that out to me, because he was right. Like, that's all I did. Like, we talked about comics and, hey, Taki, how are you doing? Well, I just read, whatever. And boy, did I love this and that. And he's just like, yeah, but the assignment from okay, never mind. So yeah, no, he totally got me. I'm really grateful, and I'm glad that happened.
Yeah, obviously he did it in a loving way. It wasn't some like gatekeeping way, or like, I've got to put you through this fire test to see if you really want to be here. I hate that kind of attitude.
Oh yeah,
good person who just realized, you just clearly you love this more than that.
Yes. Yeah. And then Mike, already you start to mention about, you started to draw. And how did you start in comics?
With tracing, I was so fascinated by these comics when I was first getting them in Texas. And I remembered as a kid, I'd always drawn a little bit, and it was something that
Yes.
other people had pointed out that I was fairly good at. And then one day somebody didn't like my drawing, so I just stopped, that kind of story.
Yeah.
But when I got these comics, and it was like, this was still in Texas. This is pre discovering X-Men Annual 9 and all that.
Yes.
Some Web of Spider-Man and Peter Parker's comics. They were, I think, the ones drawn by like Rich Buckler at the time. And I had tracing paper, and I just started tracing.
Yes.
Just started tracing. I was just fascinated by it, and through the tracing, slowly became drawing, which slowly became drawing and inking. And because I had known some aspiring comic book artists just by going to these comic book stores, like Adam, there were other artists who didn't necessarily make it in the industry, but they knew what they were doing. They had skills, and we'd all get together and talk about comics, and they teach me, this is how you ink, and you use this thing as a repeatograph. And a lot of that also goes back to, I was lucky there were all these seeds early on in my childhood that led to that. Like my mother, she didn't live with me for a long time when I was younger, because she was an alcoholic and she was fighting that stuff. She eventually beat it and got custody back me and all that. Happy story. But she would send me letters with drawings in them. So like that, the drawings was something that I would be attached to. And I had a cousin, and I remember him once showing me how he would draw, and he had this trick. He said, look, this is what I do. First, I'll draw it in pencil, and then I take a pen, and then I draw over it, and then I erase the pencil.
Yeah.
So it just looks like it's drawn in pen. And like, I didn't know that was inking. I don't think he knew that was inking or anything. As my cousin Joey. So like, these little seeds that sort of led up this larger blossoming of, this is what I wanted to do. I think that's why when I saw those comics, why it hit so hard, there was already some foundational influences around me that I wasn't aware of.
Yes. Oh,
but that's it. From that moment on, I neglected everything else in my life. I did sports shortly, and then I realized how much energy sports was taking away from drawing, so I quit that. I would cut school to stay home and draw, or stay up all night and drawing. I didn't go to parties. I didn't date. I was just obsessed, and you'd think for all that drive, I'd be much better than I am today.
No, my God.
That's what I always think about. It's like, oh my God, if I didn't try this hard, I'd suck even more. I get by. I do fine.
Well, the crazy thing is, at his age, you would think he's, reached his peak of his performance a while ago. But I see his improvement every year. It's crazy, and I'm in awe, and I'm,
Well, we learn a lot from each other, and that's one of the things that I love most about our relationship and our marriage is we're such a, like, the way you see us right now in this panel, like as we're on Zoom, that's basically how we spend our life. And like, we learn so much from each other as we grow as artists and writers.
We support each other.
On our toes.
We depend on each other, and we trust each other. So it's been pretty great.
That's nice. Just thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you very much. Just thank you very much. And I'm gonna say that is the perfect segue, because we're gonna talk about the After Realm. Now, I'm gonna read a couple quotes. It was on issue number 3. Now, and this is part of a quote from newsarama.com. Quote, a flat-out fun story that's accessible for fans of any fantasy realm. Now, another quote from comicbook.com, Oeming's art is at its finest in the comic, in part due to Taki Soma's epic colors. Now, before you guys say anything, listeners, I'm going to say, because I've read all 4 issues, and I've read it, and it, this series is great. Newsarama has put it correctly that the story is accessible. now, Mike, please don't take this the wrong way, because I read any kind of comics basically, and I'll read like sometimes I'll read Conan comics, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes it gets me like a few pages for me to really get into Conan the Conan story, or like when they start to do Thor and he starts doing that the whatever his Asgardian Shakespearean speech, and
Yeah.
it takes me a little while to get to it. But for listeners, when I read the first scene, I mean literally, to me, the second page of the first issue just hooked me in. The dialogue is natural, it it just flows very smoothly, and yeah, it just feels natural. It flows very smoothly, um, and that's what I loved about, and it just grabbed me in real quickly.
Wow. Well,
You
thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
and I'm not making this up, because it's held my, and I've read all 4 issues and I love it. Um, yeah, and I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but anyway, but I also wanted to add too, Taki, your colors, I love your colors. I love it where you can, the bright, strong. Now I'm not an artist or a color, so I'm going to probably get things jumbled up or say the wrong things, but your colors in the foreground are very bright and very strong, because you can distinct it from the backgrounds. And I love the first issue, the second page, if I remember correctly, the second page is I there's like some type of town or city. I can't remember, some type of town. I love that because Taki, the artwork is really good, but Taki, what I loved was that your colors, you highlight certain buildings. It's not all faded in the background, because you can see the color strong in the foreground, and then in the mid-ground area, like you said, you color some of the houses, really strong. It stands out. It's very good. Mike, I love your art. And I really can see the influence of Mike Mignola's style in there. It is your own, but it's perfect for this series. It is.
Thanks. I mean, Mike, along with Art Adams, like I was a fan of Mignola's stuff. Honestly, I was a fan of anybody's work who was outside of. I don't mean to be critical of this, but like by the time I was reading comics in the mid and late 80s, the Marvel House style had become pretty washed out. There was a lot of imitations and imitations, and still solid stuff, but just lacking in like a flair to it. So like anybody like a Rick Leonardi, early Mike Mignola, Art Adams, Michael Golden, like anybody who just kind of stuck outside of that. Struck me. And Mignola, even way before he turned into the Mignola we know now, had just the most interesting stuff, So I was always like, I kind of considered him like my school that I went to, So yeah, I'm always proud to have those influences showing through the work.
All right, now, Mike, we're gonna start jumping in, because I want the for new listeners and new readers to kind of know what at least the After Realm storyline is about. So, like, for new readers, what is the After Realm about? I know that sounded kind of weird when I asked that question again, but I think you know what I mean.
I've spent a lot of time at Marvel, and pre-Marvel, I did a series called Hammer of the Gods, which was a Norse mythology comic. And then obviously working at Marvel on a couple of Thor titles and actually doing Ragnarok, I had always had thoughts about, well, what happens afterwards? And there are some written accounts with different characters, but it doesn't get very deep. So it's a pretty wide open world. And I think it was around 2012 or so, I had been working at this video game company called Valve, where we're doing like Left 4 Dead and Half-Life and Team Fortress and stuff. And I was looking to do another creator-owned comic. It had been a while because I was working at the stores or at the that company, so it was mostly working there and working on powers.
Mhm.
And it had been a while since I had done something, so I was like, let me just. And I was taking advice from my buddy David Mack, who would talk about returning to your roots. What were the earliest things that influenced you? And I was thinking about the fantasy ideas that I had in my head as a kid, and elves were part of that. So it started there. And early on, it was very different. It was going to be much more heavy metal, like really kind of gonzo and, through a male gaze kind of stuff. And I was just going to embrace all of that and, go pretty crazy with it. And just as time went by, it started to evolve. Glad the story came together, because honestly, the stories that you read in the first few issues are not the stories that I intended to tell. I really intended it to start kind of around where issue 3 starts.
Yes.
Whereas all this stuff with Oona as a child came from another opportunity. It was a startup company that was going to do like a webtoons kind of thing, like an infinite scroll. And I took the opportunity, I leapt into it, and then the deal fell apart. I'm too fast for my own good sometimes. So I had finished a huge chunk of the story before the contracts came through, and then things fell apart. So there I was getting ready to do this thing, and then now I had this whole other story. And now, instead of like the heavy metal kind of aspect of it, I've introduced them as young kids. And I was like, all right, now I have to rethink this as this has to be PG 13, for a little bit of violence, and that's it.
Yes.
And I embraced that and figured out a way to put them together. So I'm glad it all works out.
Yes.
The general story, and then we get to the point for people, is my fascination with Ragnarok and what happens afterwards. I want to, in my mind, when Ragnarok happens, it kind of ties into again early stuff, like all of Realm ties into my early life. And I went to school and Sunday school and went to church as a kid. And like all Christians, you think that God is going to come after you and judge you and destroy you and turn the world into fire. So I had these early imaginations of like the end of time happening to everybody at the same time, that everybody was going to be judged at the same time from all cultures all around the world and stuff. For some reason in my head, time wouldn't matter at the end of time. So that ties into this, was basically when Ragnarok happens for the Asgardians, the end of the world happens for everybody, whether it's the Yuga, whether it's the Mayan calendars, whether it's a Christian version, whether it's a pagan version. There's all these, the gods will die, or time will come to an end. So I wanted to have this small group of elves have this pocket universe where they retreat into this pocket world when everything falls apart. Thousands of years later, they begin to train a small amount of rangers to go out and remap what has become of all of the realms. Find out, well, what happened to the gods when they died, and are there new gods coming up? So it's the idea is Oona and some other rangers are going out into this decimated reality where time and space are no longer have any meaning, and they're trying to just map out. And then they find, like, in her first encounter is with Odin. What happens to Odin? Odin's body he's killed, and he is eaten up by these worms, and then the worms evolve over thousands of years to be like have shadows or echoes of Odin in him, and he kind of remembers through these maggots, these giant,
Yes, I love the maggots.
By God, that he kind of remembers that he's Odin, So it's these kind of things, rediscovering the gods and rediscovering and remapping mythology. And there's some larger story arcs in there that I'm going to start to sort of work into shorter stories as we go into the future. But the idea is just, let's rediscover mythology. Let's rethink about what all these symbols mean, all from around the world, and explore that. And that's largely what that's about.
Now, Taki, what was your reaction when Mike told you this story?
I said, get out of here. No, I thought to myself, like, well, I like elves. I like fantasy. I think this would be really, really fun. He basically was like, well, I really want you just want to have fun with it. I'm like,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's the best motivation in my mind. So yeah, let's just go with it. And yeah, if you need a colorist, I can color it.
Yeah. Taki's such, as you were talking about her colors earlier, she's not just aesthetically a pleasing colorist, but she tells story with coloring. That includes editing. Like what is the eye drawn to and not drawn to in my art to further tell the story.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons why I love working with her was she was able to not just help me with the story behind the scenes, but actually physically on the page. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I do my best.
Oh, but no, but Mike, thank you for sharing that with me. And Taki, don't take this the wrong way, because I mean, whenever I see the creative team of like inker and colorists, they're like, okay, colorist is someone just they put the colors in. But Mike, like you expand more, it's they're telling the story too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh my, so that's no, and I'm embarrassed to say that after nearly some 50 years, I finally learned, what really, the strength of a colorist is and how important.
Well, then a lot of you're not supposed to notice. It's kind of like cinematography in a film. Like it needs to just be there and to pull you in. But when it calls attention to itself, then it becomes like, I don't know, like a Michael Bay film or something, or that's almost bigger than anything else. And yeah, just like the artist needs to know not to draw over the word balloon space. You got to make sure as you're drawing it, you're respecting the space of the other people and stuff. And writers looking out to not overrate stuff so that there's space for shine. And we got to think about the colorists, and the colorists think about how best to make their work perfectly melded and married with the artwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Taki, another question I'm going to ask. Did you contribute any Japanese mythology into the story? Because I've already read the first 4 issues. I know we talk about the 9 realms. I want to, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say issue 3 or issue 4. I don't know if you start to introduce a little bit different mythologies into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a small spirit animal, Nikomo, I believe his name is, which was like a tree spirit. But we only see him for a little bit. Most of these characters that we introduced, we'll see again in future stories. Right now, that's as far as I've gotten, because this I'm telling this main story before I look forward to be able to jump around and tell a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I know the basics of like Japanese folklore and mythology, but I'm not really well versed in them. So like he knows what I know and stuff like that, but I don't know if anything was influenced into that story, really.
Well, I wouldn't say mythology wise, but one of the greatest comics of all time you introduced me to, that my brain is
which one?
With the one-eyed kid and his father.
Gegege no Kitaro.
Yeah, that is so full of mythological imagery. And Gegege no Kitaro is about like this kid who's he's half
yokai. If yokai is basically a spirit.
Okay.
Good or bad, so this kid is like half yokai, half human, and his eyeball is his father. So he can pop his eye out, and it has a little tiny body underneath it, and that's his father. And he just lives in this world where like yokai world and human world is open to him, and so he can jump back and forth.
And while that story is not straight mythology, it's obviously influenced by the mythology, and that influenced me as well, because of like that's a very elf-like, or fairy-like character, sort of in between worlds. And then the thing reminds me of Odin. Odin loses his eye, sacrifices it for knowledge. So I had imagery of that'll tie into it as well. But the more as we get down the line, and I'm also being really careful about like how I pick and tell these stories, from other cultures and stuff, to just not only just be respectful, but just make sure I'm getting the facts right, and answer anything I have to answer for after it's published and all of that, you know.
All right. Now, Mike, I'm going to ask, for our listeners, can you at least, like, who are some of your main characters in the story? You've already mentioned Oona? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got that correct. Okay. Yeah.
Una's the main character. Her so much of this comic comes from, because I went back to the roots of things. I keep looking back at the things that formulated me as a person and as an artist, and infusing them into the story, which gives me great relief to hear that you can relate to the story, because I'm not writing this the way I wrote for Marvel or when I wrote Ragnarok or any of that stuff. I'm literally just writing it for me, and I'm not sure when things make sense. Like I have a relative who passed. My Aunt Carol helped raise me. She shows up as a spirit guide.
Yes.
At a certain point, and I'm like, I don't, she's got her bingo cup and she's smoking a cigarette, and she's on her horse with no name, because that was her favorite song from a James Taylor song. And like I'm infusing all of this stuff into there. So Oona,
almost quite literally.
Yeah. Actually, at her funeral, that's what we buried. We buried her in her bingo shirt and some cigarettes and a coffee cup, and So now she's back here in the comic, guiding my character. And Oona's name comes from one of my favorite fantasy films, which was Legend, Ridley Scott. The main fairy character was Oona, who steals a kiss from Tom Cruise at one point, and she's a troublemaker, so that was all fitting.
Yeah.
And the last name Lightfoot, as a huge influence on me, was the singer-songwriter stuff in the 70s. Like growing up, there was I grew up in a disabled household. They were legally blind, my aunt and uncle. So music was constantly on. And there's always like folk music and Motown and a lot of singer-songwriter stuff. So more than films or television, music and the words in music influenced me. Gordon Lightfoot was a huge influence. All of his songs were stories, whether it's the record Fitzgerald, Sundown, or If You Can Read My Mind, all of that stuff. So that seemed fitting, as well as it's a character kind of like Luke Skywalker, who he's a traveler of the spirit, right? With Oona Lightfoot, it just seems perfect. So that's kind of where her name came from, was all of those influences. Her character, her sidekick, this goat who is magically compelled to protect her, his name is Puka. That comes right out of old Celtic mythology. And also one of my favorite books of all time. It was a book of fairy drawings by Alan Lee and Brian Froud. And in that book, and then Brian Froud designed all the Dark Crystal stuff, which was a huge influence again from my childhood. Alan Lee does all of the classic Lord of the Rings work. And there was a drawing of this Puka character, which is a goat man, this man with a goat head. Always stuck with me. It just seared itself into my mind. So that's where he comes from. And he's a helpful chaos character. So he has magical powers that will help her, but he usually screws it up. He means well.
Yeah.
So the two of them have a lot of great banter next to each other. There's a cast of other elves that will come and go through the stories. There is the villain character, Thornbrack. I think he just sort of evolved out of a lot of mythological imagery around trees. Which then informed me about the story, the ultimate story of where all of this is going, what the ultimate threat was going to be, which I don't want to give away too much of yet. But those were the big influences there. And then just other fun things are in there. There's the way that I draw the trolls that are drawn by, they kind of look like dogs.
Yes.
That came from a weird memory. I'm not sure if I can share this with Taki. I remember a girl in like 3rd grade or 2nd grade showing me how she draws a dog, and it just had this wide nose and this wide eye and stuff, and that always stuck with me. So I ended up drawing my trolls to look half dog like, even though they're not really. I'm not even sure how much fur versus skin there is. Just open, but again, that's all stuff pulled from the childhood. And then he ends up getting partnered up with this magical robot named BD. Now obviously that's kind of a play off of, like, you've got like R2D2 and all of that stuff. And I think you've asked me about this in earlier in an email, it is exactly from Buck Rogers in the 21st
Yes.
century. You know, that little character, that robot character, Tweaky.
Yes.
Oddly, he would go beady beady.
Yes.
So that's where the name comes from. It's like all of this is just reaching back into my formulative stuff. Thundar is a huge influence on there. The Cracked Moon, that's there from Thundar. Even Puka's kind of a stand-in for Ukla the Mock. You know, who then I actually draw in issue 4. There's these Bigfoot-like characters that you see.
Yes.
Those are very much influenced by Ukla the Mock. So it all goes back to my childhood, and I'm just remixing everything, all my influences, and just hoping other people get it, because I have, luckily with Kickstarter, this is the beauty of Kickstarter. I don't have to make these calculations like I have to if I'm doing something for the mainstream audience or an independent book that has to survive a Dark Horse or Image.
Yes.
You know, throwing my aunt in there as a spirit guide, I have no idea how that's going to land with people, or if they'll understand it, or if it matters better that they don't understand it. You know, so yeah, this is just, it really is, it's everything that's ever influenced me getting mixed up into this, hopefully a unique experience.
Because Mike, because again, like I've said, I've read all 4 issues, and also, sorry listeners, I know you're going to hear paper shuffling in the background, because I also, in one of your Kickstarters, I got that little poster spread, and I want to say, I think the story is called Mother's Sword. It was I thought that was so cool. I didn't expect that. You know, I think when I ordered back the Kickstarter for issue number 4, that came with it, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah, one of the incentives that we had was I did a poster with a 2-page story, which I intended on doing more of, but like bandwidth got the best of me. So it was just a 2-page story, kind of explaining the sword that she carries from her mother, and that there's these. I guess they were evil beings, these spirits that were caught in her sword.
Yes.
When she vanquished, her mother vanquished evil beings, they'd get stuck in her sword. But I wanted them to change, so like they've been in there for thousands of years in her sword. They witnessed not only the things that they've done and being trapped in with other horrible evil beings in the sword, but they've seen the good things that her mother had done with it over the years, and then what Oona's doing with it. And at a certain point, the sword gets broken open, the spirits out, and they've changed. You know, this again goes back to childhood stuff, complicated religious crap. Like I remember asking Mom about forgiveness and turning the other cheek, and complicated stuff I couldn't understand as a kid. And of course, you know, you ask these really hard questions, and like, I don't know that it's true, but I'd like to imagine, let's say this, I'd like to imagine that even the most evil of people are capable of change. Like, I don't know where that lands. I don't know what that means or anything, but in a fictional world, I can at least express that idea in here. So like they choose when they're freed from the sword, they actually choose to go back into the sword, to stay with Oona, to help her, instead of, oh, I'm free now and I can go. Like, no, they're no, the best, we want to change, and we want to help make things better. So again, it's all weird stuff from childhood stuff that just gets thrown into this mix, and then that's how it comes about.
I'm going to say, because I love that little 2-page origin story, because after I read all 4 issues, I decided to read the 2-page story. So I'm like, oh, because it kind of it was kind of a nice because to me it kind of sort of fit. I want to say either issue 3 or 4, like when I think Oona is talking to her childhood friend. Now, is it Piki? About the fairies, and because I remember there was a scene where he's going, are you okay staying out in the sun? As long as I have my cloak on. And then she's doing the maps, and all these fairies are kind of like pulling either the map away, and
Yeah.
I remember like 1 or 2 panels in that 2-page story kind of showed that. Then all of a sudden, then you start going into talking about the sword and so forth. And I thought that was a nice little bonus to it.
Nice. I thought it was a really fun extra, and I wish I had bandwidth. I had intended to keep doing more, but it's just time is hard. I'm glad you brought it up too, because as I'm putting together issue 5, I need to make sure that's reprinted in there. I'm very good at doing the work. Everything outside of the work is hard for me. The production end is hard. And I can lose track of things. I'm really glad you brought that story up. But it was a really fun incentive, and maybe we'll be able to. This Kickstarter is going pretty well so far, so maybe for the stretch goals, we'll be able to bring back some of these posters and stuff, and just
have. Off the cuff question before I ask Taki a question, because correct me if I'm wrong, because I think as of yesterday, you reached 50% of your goals. Is that correct? And
3 a.m. we were able to break halfway.
Yeah.
So really, really grateful for that, because that takes off some pressure.
Again, listeners, I know when you guys listen to this, the Kickstarter will be at least like a week or 2 already into the campaign, but we're talking about this on September 8th. Already the campaign has been, it has been going on for 4 days. It's already reached 50%, which is very good.
No, thank you. I got to credit a lot of that to Dan Brereton's going to be doing a cover for us.
Yes.
And Dan's a beautiful artist, and it has a really strong audience behind him. And then our friend Sean McManus helped me make this trailer. That animated trailer thing blew my mind. Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of it too. It's just grabbing other people, their attention. This trailer was just such a blessing. I can't believe that Sean did this.
I know. It's amazing. He's a really great friend.
Yeah.
And a talented friend.
Yeah. And then of course, all the supporters who have been there from the very beginning. I know one thing the only sort of stretch goal thing I'm going to promise is I'm going to do a sticker that basically says anyone from issue 1 through 5, even if you only supported issue 5, you're an original Kickstarter supporter, like an original After Realm Kickstarter supporter kind of sticker, something that because I do plan on, I don't know if I'm going to.
So you're going to do instead of I voted, it's like I read it.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever form or shape it takes place in the future, this is really the foundation for everything else, is these 5 issues, and everybody who supported it and made it possible should feel some amount of ownership over it. I was there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Now, I am joking on this part. It's an off the cuff question, Mike, and you can answer Taki too as well. You've already mentioned about stickers. Are you going to make a sticker called Kyle's fart, right? Because isn't that
crow farts?
Because isn't that Oona's catchphrase?
It is, yeah, especially as she was younger. I needed some, when I knew there wasn't going to be cursing. When I pulled it away from that sort of heavy metal thing, I always loved that expression, by Odin's beard, and that kind of stuff. And for a while, I was going to have her say, "Stop the madness." Because I was watching Shark Tank, and I loved it when one guy would just say that was his dumb catchphrase, and for some reason I loved it. And luckily Taki talked me out of it. And crow farts, definitely, yeah, that should definitely be a sticker of some sort.
I imagine it smelling like berries. It should be a scratching sniff. And it should smell like berries.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
All right. Now, let's see. Actually, Taki, I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm not being sarcastic. Because I know you and Mike work well together. Did Mike bounce off dialogue with you when he's trying to write? If you get stuck with something, or
Well, yeah, I gotta say, not a whole lot. I'll read his scripts. A lot of times I'll put my 2 cents in, but I try to keep my mouth shut. because I am notoriously like a harsh critic. I'm extremely like hard-headed when it comes to dialogue and stuff like that, and you know, and I keep telling myself like, this is Mike's story, this isn't my story. So I try to stay out of his way as much as possible, but yes, we do rely on each other, and we you know, consult each other every step of the way, or even if like, you know, even like for my own project, like and even if he's not writing it, I consult him all the time. You know, like, does this work and stuff like that, and he does the same. So yeah, absolutely.
And we don't have any ego about it. You know, we're just looking for the best. And like, Taki's being modest, but she really is like my editor. She really helps me edit down. One of the things that I've changed recently, because I learned from her at what she was doing with Sleeping with Standing, she set herself such harsh parameters to work within that she's become a masterful editor in storytelling and getting to the point. I had started to lean on dialogue and becoming too verbose. Like, one of the things you do when you're writing a page, once you have the beats out on your page, like the directions, sometimes an easy way to write is to just write out whatever you think people are going to say. And I started to lean on that trick too much. So very verbose and repetitive. Sometimes you want to be repetitive for like a pacing kind of thing. But I definitely needed help on all that. Taki was a huge help. And so it's not like I was asking her advice. She just helped me just cut a lot of stuff down and to stay focused. I also had help with, luckily we have a great circle of friends around us. Brian Bendis, David Mack, David Walker, and Sam Humphreys in particular was a huge help with disperse issues. I had Oona wanting more than one thing. And the phrase he was using is a character can't ride two horses. You know, and that really helped me focus in on stuff. And Taki's been a huge day-to-day editor on helping me with the dialogue and the story, keeping it clear. So yeah.
I don't really know what I'm doing at all, but I don't know why he listens to me.
She's so wrong. She's a genius. She has developed skills over time. And I think it was this format that she chose for Sleeping While Standing. It made a huge leap for herself. And as we started to study other writings, like we listened to the Alan Moore writing course, and loved it. And one of the things we loved about it was he was talking about like experimental writing, like try to write a sentence without the word "the" in it, and see how far you get. What choices you're forced to make. And he would give examples of all these novels that were written, short novels, without like using the letter E or some crazy stuff, right? And like, it just sounds like a show-off exercise, but it is not. It's an exercise in editing and rethink clarity and how you look at this object from a different point of view. Taki did that to herself. This is before we didn't listen to that stuff till afterwards, but this is what she put herself through when she decided to tell complicated, deep, personal stories in 4 pages or less. And all of our friends, I mean, we would show these to Walker and to Bendis, and they'd be kind of flabbergasted, you know, like what Taki was able to do. And it's changed the way that I've written since then. And I'm really excited for the stories I'm going to start writing for Avon afterwards because of this. Yeah. So
it's just a style. I mean, there's no right or wrong, you know.
We hate talking.
Yeah. But you know, yeah, there's no right or wrong. That's what we need to remember. It's like, you know, you style, and I don't always want to write so like to the point and precise and like quick. I don't always want to do that, but I did learn a lot from doing scanning. Yeah, you know, and it'll just keep going.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Mike, I'm going to ask you, you know, like for the After Realm, did you have some type of Bible for your character? And did you like draw out or sketch out a map or have some, like a rough draft of a map of the 9 realms? Or
honestly, I really love world building. That was one of the things I would love doing before I started a comics. Just tons and tons of sketches. And I did a lot of sketches of Oona and the After Realm. But honestly, between refiguring out how I wanted to write, because I was in a writing rut, and then this complication that came up where I had this other opportunity and I drew the younger Una stuff, and then I had to marry those into each other. It really, and I mean this in the best way, it's a ship being built as it's sailing. Usually that sounds like a mess. Sometimes it feels like a mess, but because of the nature of the kind of stories I'm telling, I think it's the best way to do it. I think if I thought too hard about things, which was what tripping me up early on, I was thinking too hard about plot and explaining how this works, and explaining how you can't cross from this part of the world to another part of the world, and explaining why
you're bush writing.
Yeah. I've learned to just write out in all directions. So it forced this to come about in a natural way. So yeah, I really didn't plan on it, and I think basically this first 5 issues will become that Bible. So all the other stories I'm going to tell, like there are characters I introduce here, and we know about who they are, but they're not the focus of it. We'll return to in the future. So this becomes the Bible of the whole thing.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I'm just gonna make a compliment. Is what I loved about the first 4 issues is I love the first 2 issues that it focuses on Una as a child, what happened when Ragnarok happened, why she went underground. She had to literally be separated from her friend, and then from issue 3 and then she's trying to look for her friend, and then issues 3 and 4 she's trying to find out what happened after, afterwards. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's still trying to look for her friend. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And
that all comes to a head in issue 5, in the last issue. I won't say it's resolved or not resolved, but it builds up to issue 5. Yeah.
All right.
And that's another thing for my child is just huge amounts of separation anxiety. Almost all of my stories have involved that in some way.
But the other thing, what I love, and I sorry, I'm not, don't take offense or anything, but for me that was a very good hook because I could relate to that.
Yeah.
It's like she's trying to look for her friend. It's like, and it's not like, oh well, he's gone.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they have a very deep friendship.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that, now correct me if I'm wrong, Una's mom didn't really kind of approve of her and Peaky's relationship, sort of, or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't want the elves to be perfect. I didn't want her mother, who's like the leader and all that, again, to be perfect. And this was another huge influence on me, which is Led Zeppelin. And there's a song called oh crap! Of course I'm forgetting. That's the Way. And in the song, it's like it's a very light guitar sounds very medievalish. Kind of vibe to it, and melancholy about how this kid and this other kid aren't allowed to play together anymore, the way it is. And in my mind, it was like there's a difference between the elves in this world and the fairies in this world, and even fairy-like, not fairy-like, like elves, wood spirits. And they don't have the same set of rules and stuff. And Una's mother realizes that the influence of an outsider like that can come back to have a bad consequence, kind of like any culture is afraid of outside influences. So that's where that's where that came from. And in fact, you can find some of those lyrics in those first pages. They're just taken right out of Led Zeppelin's "That's the Way."
Wow. That's pretty nice. That's really nice. And
I think we've all had that experience where your mother or father or parental figure is telling you don't play with that kid.
Yes.
And kids, or you think that kid's fine,
Yeah. But the other cool, sorry, I'm kind of going off track, but then before I get into my next set of questions, but Mike, I think what's really great is that like you said, you not only are incorporating things that form your childhood, such as like, the X-Men annual and the New Mutants annual, Thundar the Barbarian. But I mean, you're really also grasping music as well too that influenced the story as well.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that and I keep saying this, but thank you very much for letting me interview you guys, because I'm hoping listeners that are in our age group, will listen to this and go, oh my God, I didn't. So Oona's last name Lightfoot came from Gordon Lightfoot. In the first page of issue number 1, it's a song. These are the lyrics from a Led Zeppelin song I remember listening to years ago, and it just brings back. It just brings back.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Nostalgia.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's really nice is that, Mike, is that for it, the music part, you're just touching on it, kind of almost like on a unconscious level for us, for us in our age group.
Yeah,
it's great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, and I want it to be subliminal. A, I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
B, I don't want it to call attention to itself. I just
Yeah,
want it
you
to
don't
be,
want it to be nudge when you
Yeah,
no, yeah.
First one, get it.
Giddy up.
And before we started recording, listeners, I talked to Mike about, my God, man, I remember hearing, Gordon Lightfoot back in the 70s. And just for that nostalgia, Taki, as you mentioned, just for that nostalgia, it was like, oh my God, I have to go and, I Googled on YouTube, a Gordon Lightfoot song, I was like, and I listened to If You Could Read My Mind, because that was one of my favorite songs from the 70s. But it's been so many years.
Yeah.
Since I've heard it. And matter of fact, I even forgot his name.
Wow.
He's still touring. I hope he gets out to the Northwest again, because last time he was here, just scheduling wise, I couldn't make it. But I'm really hoping I could see him. Yeah, he's still out there. He's still got it.
Wow, that's incredible.
But I think what's pretty cool is that it's his music style is, he's not, and this is not a strike against performers today or anything, but it's just him and his guitar.
Yep.
He's just standing there, and I don't know, it's just something about the lyrics that just grabs you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
he's a storyteller. He's a storyteller. That's why it's compelling. That's why it sticks in your head.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm sorry. We got to keep moving on. Sorry. Now, I'm going to ask you, either one, actually, Taki or even Mike, after 4 successful campaigns, what were some of the fans' reaction to the series so far?
Positive. I mean, they're all positive, right? I mean, yeah. I think, I don't know.
It's such a, one of the what I thought was a trade-off in my head, right, was a smaller audience for a guaranteed publication, right? Usually I'm just desperate to get as many people as possible to buy the book, because when you're doing creator-owned stuff, it's typically off of a royalty-based thing. So you don't know if you're going to make any money at all.
Yes.
So there was a safety net here, and knowing we would recoup our time, right? And I thought that having a smaller audience was going to be a lesser than experience, and it totally has not been. Hearing from people who have not just saying stuff like, it's not just on their read pile like everything else. They go, oh, cool. They are so appreciative and observant about the story, and I hear more in-depth reactions to the stories than I do for anything else that I do. Anything.
Because they're invested.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And we've made, online friendships with people who have been backers on the books. Like this guy, Mike Plavin. This guy, Rick, I talk to all the time on Twitter. you just start to get to know people. And like, even when you screw up and like somebody's package gets lost, they're so patient.
Yeah.
Or people that I've just dropped the ball several times. Right? It takes a long time, not for everything to get out, but one person's order, one person's special thing can either get lost or there's a problem. Everybody is so patient and understanding about it. It's a completely different experience than everything else. And until you've done it, you can't really explain what it's like. And I'm super grateful for it, and it's humbling in all the best ways.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. You drop all the middleman between you and the reader, you know. So yes, there's a lot more we have to do in order for it to happen.
Yeah.
But you know, you get it directly from us. So yeah, there's no bookstore or publisher or distributor or any people in between.
Yeah, we do have help that I want to call out to is Jeff McCumsky. He's another Kickstarter guy. He's got several of his own books. He's a great Kickstarter campaign guy, and he helps us with our fulfillment. He helped walk us through how up the Kickstarter. Like I said, our bandwidth is super, super tight between work and health stuff, and without Jeff, we just wouldn't have been able to do it or get these books out or anything. So just kind of like the Kickstarter funders help with everything happen. Jeff is one of those people behind the scenes, and our letterer as well. Sean Lee. Yes, he does all the technical stuff that I don't know how to put together a complicated PDF. So without Sean and his amazing lettering, there's lots of stuff I just wouldn't be able to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Takes a lot to bring a comic together.
All right. Now we've come up to the After Realm issue 5. Already the campaign is in full swing. And Mike, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a dumb question without spoilers. Can you tell listeners what issue 5 is going to be about?
Issue 5 steps into what I think is sort of a brand new mythology. At least for me, it's the American mythology. So on issue 4, there's a big American flag, so it's not too much of a giveaway. She steps out into what's left of the American spirit. It's not a physically literal America anymore because everything's gone. The chunks that are left, and she'll meet what I feel are like some of the representations of the foundation of America, good and bad. So there's some imagery of there's some gun imagery. It represents a lot of things that without even saying it, what these things going back into our history. There's a circus imagery, the circus of what sometimes we can be. There's an American eagle imagery, which represents up the positive stuff, and there's these other characters that represent a lot of things. And I'm trying to really be careful because of they mean so many things to different people. And hopefully I'm saying something without being too heavy-handed about it in the end. And we get to explore the iconology of America and what that means for Oona going forward. Because as she's discovering, quote, a new world, this was a new world that was already discovered, quote, discovered, and what happens to that old world, what happens to that new world, what happens to both of them after both of them are gone. So treading over all this territory, and so hopefully it's not too heavy-handed, but it's there. It's another way, hopefully an interesting way of looking at America, not simply a negative or an overly positive way. It's just an objective way of looking back when America's done. What are the things that's left? And then Oona comes to resolutions about certain things, and it really opens up the world at the end of this to all the stuff I'm really, really excited about doing.
Mike, I'm sorry, I'm going to go off the cuff here, because I know it was kind of foreshadowed in issue number 1 that there was one of the trolls that looks like, it looks like a huge, of course, like you said, the troll sort of looked like almost like this brutish dog. But the cool thing I remember just seeing the image of one of them holding out like a Tommy gun. Holy cow!
That's
And you know what that reminded me of? I don't know. Ralph, I want to say, hopefully it's the right movie I'm looking. Ralph Bashki's The Wizard.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Because
the cover is Oona on this on the her ostrich character, right? That's directly off of the Wizard's cover.
Oh my God, that's right. Oh,
that guy with the mask, and that's when it was going to be. Also, that goes back to like that heavy metal and a lot of Bashki stuff was part of that. You know, it had all this crazy like footage from World War II was there. So I kept some of that, but in a way that I thought was more palatable, and but yeah, that's definitely from Ralph Bashki's Wizards is a huge influence on this as well. That's exactly, you're right about that. That is, yeah.
But I was going, oh my God, this is so cool, you know.
Jason's your target market.
Yeah.
All right. Because, and if I remember correctly, I think from the Kickstarter, your Kickstarter campaign, issue 5 completes the first story arc. Like, I'm just asking, how many volumes do you have planned for this series about?
My plan is just to keep going. Now, I don't know publishing-wise exactly what my plans are going to be. I don't know if I'll continue to do all of these as Kickstarters. I do know what I'm going to do is the next sets of stories you're going to start seeing, like everybody will get, you're getting a scoop here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, thank you.
They'll all be free initially. So I'm going to be putting them in my newsletters. Bigger versions will be on my I have a very modest Patreon page, which is, I just put up like large size imagery. There's no real behind the scenes stuff. It's just kind of like poster size stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do the short stories on my own time.
Yes.
Put them out that way, which will continue to expand the universe and explore the stories. The next one is her running into Medusa. After that, I'm going to try to get wildly outside of the Greek and Norse stuff, which I'm leaning on a lot. But there'll be in my newsletter, and no charge. There's no paywall. And that will also help me make sure I get my newsletter out more, because I'm horrible. I'm only good at doing the work. I'm horrible about talking about the work, promoting it. So I figured at least this way, it gives me deadline motivations to get stuff out.
Yeah.
Then the stories will be compiled, and I'll either do those as Kickstarter straight to trades, or some other way of actually putting them physically together. So I'm not quite sure yet. But the good news is more stories, and they'll be free for everybody, and you guys will be in on the ground floor.
And hopefully, like it'll feel more frequent. Because it will be more frequent.
Yes.
In small.
Yeah, more frequent and smaller bites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'll be good. Yes. Now, for listeners who have not picked up an issue of the After Realm, because these are thick issues. How many pages are they?
I went and wrote those down this morning. So issue 1 was 46 pages. Issue 2 is 50 pages. Issue 3 is 48. Issue 4 is 40 pages. And right now, issue 5 is coming in at 32, but it's not really finished yet. So
yes.
So you get a huge chunk of story for your investment.
Yes, because it was great. It was just like, and again, I'm not putting down other creators who do the Kickstarters and just only because it's time and effort and stuff. But when I got that first issue, it was like, oh my God, this is it's a very nice, good. It's a complete story. Well, not a complete story, but I felt like I got my money's worth through the Kickstarter.
That's good.
Yeah, and I'm aware that with Kickstarter, this is the way it's modeled and stuff. You do have to charge a premium price. So I wanted to make sure that people get like a really good meal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
And then let's see. And then are you able to talk? Well, are you able to talk about rewards tier? Well, you already talked about a sticker, a variant cover.
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly simple. We've got a bunch of rewards, but instead of going over every little detail, you can get every issue in the add-on section. So if you buy a single physical copy of issue 5, then through the add-on sections, you can get any single issue you might have been missing. We also have all 5 issues are available to order, so you can get basically the whole story at once now.
Yes.
I have 2 different covers for myself. This is one of the wonderful things about Kickstarter. So I had 2 or 3 versions of the cover, and I was stuck on what I liked best. There's the version that's better for the story, for the aesthetics of what the book is, and then one I liked better because it just was fucking cool. Pardon me. It was just really cool.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's okay. It's
So
okay.
so my main cover is the one that's appropriate for the story, and then there's a B cover, which is the one that's quote cool, cooler or whatever. It doesn't really make sense.
It's closer to your heart.
Yeah. And those are 15. Those are the regular covers. And then the incentive cover is by Dan Brereton, and that'll be $20. You can also get our back issue incentive covers, which are done by Elsa Chartier, and Phil Hester did issue 2. And so you can buy all of them in different combinations and stuff. And we also have original artwork up for sale.
That's also in the add-ons.
Yeah.
And
then the fun add-on is I've got the for people who missed the earlier Kickstarters, you can buy the bookmarks, and I did a Powers sticker sheet. And $10. But I kept it pretty simple just for the sake of sanity.
Yes.
Because there's already just a wild combination of like you can get, individual issues or all 5 issues, or there's the issues with PDFs, and like once you start getting into that, like it can get complicated and hard to make it really clear for customers.
Yeah, looking like the menu from Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah,
I look at their menu and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. It's just too many to choose from, so forget it.
Yeah.
It's like 4 pages.
I love that. One of the fun ones is too, and this was something that Jeff had taught me early on, was to do what's called the vault. So basically it's 5 issues of random comics that I've done over the years, my comps basically, that I signed. So you'll get 5 random signed comics, and it could be anything from Powers to Dick Tracy to Midnighter, which is just some Midnighter stuff. That's a great way to share stuff with people, and for people to get something signed, because I don't do many conventions, pretty much not at all, and I don't get out there physically very much. So it's a fun way to get a little extra.
Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, I'm slowly wrapping things up. Sorry, I didn't mean to take up a lot of your time.
No problem.
Okay, so Mike, I'm going to start off with you first. What did you enjoy or love the most about doing this series, The After Realm?
It's so self-indulgent. I even with Powers and the creator-owned work that Taki and I have done together on like Rapture and Synergy, or Takio, or any of these other books, we're still curating them for a mass audience, and this whole experience has been like this discussion, just talking about how I didn't realize how much I've been pulling from my experiences growing up and put into the story. That and working with Taki and us discussing story, we have like what we call the morning podcast, where we end up talking about stories like for an hour,
and why and how and all this stuff, what worked, what doesn't work, and stuff like that. Pretty much every morning.
Yeah. And then, like I said, the surprise of having a smaller, I don't want to use the word loyal, but just a smaller party of an audience. That experience has shocked me in a way that I never saw coming. So yeah, it's just that getting to do things your own way. You're building my imagination, and I'm sharing with a small group of friends and people who I can count on. There have been Kickstarter supporters who've helped me in other ways. Whether it's with advice and stuff like that, or you should check this thing out, and just striking up casual friendships with people. And because we live a super isolated life, part of which is by choice, part of which is like health, part of which is the work. So this is a great way to have a community.
Taki, what about you? What is the thing that you love most about doing this series with Mike?
I'm just honored that he lets me be part of it, because I do love that world, and I love the characters, and I love the story. So I love that I get to be a part of it, and help it come together.
No. Thank you very much.
Oh,
All right.
welcome.
I'm slowly wrapping things up. Let's see. Mike, I'm going to ask you a fun question. Taki, you can jump into. You guys already know what the question is, but now Mike, you already talked about your love for Thundar the Barbarian cartoon. If IDW should call you after they listen to this amazing interview, and you can okay. If they call you, say, hey, we have the Thundar the Barbarian license, you know, we want you to do the comic, you know, write, draw, Taki can color. Do you have a story pitch ready for them?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I've had one for like 15 years. I think we were talking with the company a while back, and it was something we were going to develop, and then kind of like a lot of projects, sometimes they just get derailed or whatever. But yeah, you know, I would in a second.
That is nice.
No hesitation, right?
All right.
Would you rate her?
Yep, I'm up for anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is cool. That'll be so cool. Either one could write it, or Taki could write it and you draw. Either way. All right, Taki, I'm going to ask you this question. What is the most fun or exciting thing that you love about working in comics?
I guess the food.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain that a little bit more.
In the green room at a convention, just makes a beeline for the donuts.
No, I what I love about comics is about storytelling. What I love more than anything on this earth, besides my husband, is visual storytelling. I love visual storytelling in film, television, comics.
Mm-hmm.
I love it through and through. And what comics does best is visual storytelling, and I love it so much. So I love every aspect of it. You know, now that I've done all of it, like I've done the writing, I've done the art, I've done the colors, I've even done the lettering now. So I you know, I feel like I understand, at least, like, I'm not a master of any of them, but I understand all of the aspects of like making a comic. And with each step, there's an opportunity to tell a story and add on to it. You know, from writing to drawing, you can add more. And then with that, you add more of depth to the storytelling with colors. And then you add more depth with lettering. And it's just, it's overwhelmingly cool. And because it's comics, like, you have a lot of that under your control. I can only imagine that you don't have that kind of control in film and TV. You know, so that's a really cool way to like tell a story. So yeah, that's the aspect I love, is the storytelling. Yeah.
For me, it's basically the same. It's about the work. The work itself is so rewarding. The work itself is such a blessing. It's why I'm not great. Like, I mean, I do promote my work, you know, but it's usually I just link to links and stuff like that. I'm not good at talking about process or, you know, behind the scenes stuff or anything like that. Like, even when it comes out, like, I don't even really look at the work when it's published. You know, I look at it to see what's wrong with it, you know, like all artists. But it's the only time in my life I can really be in the moment is when we're creating our stories. And to me, it's why I want to work every day. You know, I work like 7 days a week, mostly because I want to. I really just love, whether it's drawing a page or writing a story or talking about stories with Taki and our friends. We'll watch stuff, and as a show falls apart, some of our favorite times is just talking about, well, why did it fall apart? You know, what up so well and what happened here. And then it's, you know, it's such a harder puzzle when you look at your own stuff because you're building it from scratch. You know, so yeah, it's basically the same thing with Taki, and the fact that I get to share. Yeah, I'm a copycat. I'll just take her answer. Same thing with lunch. I'll have what she's having.
All right, I'm slowly wrapping things up. Mike, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to start off this question. What is your? And I know you said that you guys don't do too much conventions and so forth, but what was your favorite convention moment? Whether it was either as a fan or as a creator.
Guessing when Taki picked me up physically at Chicago Comic-Con and with like drunken rage, it was pretty good.
Rage.
Well, that had to be the strength that you had to have to physically lift me off the ground.
Oh,
Wait a
no.
minute. Wait a minute. You physically lift Mike up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And Brian.
And Brian. Independently. It was the first time I met Brian, and he knew about me because I was on his message board.
Yes.
And so he's like, hey, I know you, you're Taki Soma. And I was like, hey, nice to meet you, Brian. Come here, I'm gonna pick you up. And I picked him up, and then there's an actual photo evidence of this interwebs.
Holding Brian like a baby.
Yeah, I'm holding him up. And then the second time I met Mike in Florida. Yeah. Probably like a few months prior.
Yeah, and that time he just challenged me to a fight, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I did challenge him to a fight. Because I was really strong back then. But yeah, and I picked Mike up too, and that was probably my favorite convention ever too.
Okay.
I couldn't believe how strong I was. I'm 5'3", and I don't look like much, but I was really, really strong, and I liked showing off how strong I was. So yeah.
But that's the main thing we miss about cons is that the people, other professionals, other fans that you would kind of only see during those stuff. Like, that's your typical answer, but it's the people.
But thank you very much. And Taki, I'm gonna say, I know you guys, don't do conventions too much, but if you guys ever come to Hawaii, the whole, for a convention, Hawaii fans will feed you good food.
Nah.
No, we do. We do. It's
it was some of the best food we had out there.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and that's gonna lead up to the next question. But I mean, because people bring malasadas to you, and for listeners, malasadas is Portuguese donut. It's you have to eat it nice, fresh, and hot, and sugar on top. I mean, I've seen fans bring up malasadas to creators, to celebrity TV stars. I've seen fans bring up the box of Hawaiian Host chocolate macadamia nuts. Yes. Okay, so now this is a nice segue to the next question. Have you guys been to Hawaii?
Yes, we have. We've been to Hawaii, Maui, and Kauai.
Yeah.
Several times. Well, Kauai once, and Maui and Oahu several times.
Yeah. I was lucky with when I was working at Valve. That was a go-to place. It was a beautiful place to work. And they treated everybody great. I know video games have had a lot of bad reputation of like how they treat and drive people and stuff, but Valve was amazing. Yeah. And one of those amazing things was vacations, and they would take us out there, and some of the best experiences we've ever had was there. One of the things that stands out most was we did that crazy drive around the cliff.
The road to Hana.
Yeah. And we're having panic attacks and stuff. We're seeing helicopters flying beneath us. Yeah. And then we see like this house selling banana stand, was selling banana bread. Yeah. Yes. And we just stopped there, and it was just one of those things, really little, just us and our friends, and we just had this experience of this homemade bread in the middle of this crazy long trip. And it was like, for all the meals that we had and the touristy cool stuff we did, diving with turtles and all the stuff you expect, like that was one of the best experiences. Yeah. That's the thing that stands out.
Yeah. 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 I agree. It was so great. Yeah.
All right. Final question. Mike, I'm going to start us off with you. any closing words to our listeners?
Well, your host here is really good. You should continue listening to his show and contribute to his Patreon. These were great questions. He made me think about things that I haven't thought about my own work here. So I'm going to go back with issue 5 as I wrap it up with a lot of this stuff in mind. I'm thinking about how to better communicate with people about where this stuff came from, because often I forget. For me, it's just about the work, but I know that I know that readers want a little bit more than that, and you're helping me connect to that. So I thank you for that, and just thank you to all the Kickstarter supporters. I can't express what an amazing experience this is. I've had a lot of opportunities in comics to do all kinds of big stuff. It doesn't really match up to this. And all the hard work.
It's a really unique experience,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I have to echo your enthusiasm for Jason being such an amazing host. I think this is like really fun. You did a lot of like research, and like you kind of knew all of the the hidden whatchamacallit, like stuff that was
subtext,
the subtext in the story. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I just want to thank you guys. Just thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
No, thank you. This was really, really fun.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you guys. Thank you very much. I wish you guys all the success with the After Realm issue number 5 campaign. So
thank you.
Oh yeah. And then Taki, thank you very much. Thank you very much for setting up this interview. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So listeners, I'm going to say, because I kind of sort of bugged Taki. I think I bugged Taki about sometime in August. And then I saw on my email about, the After Realm Kickstarter is going to start up soon. I'm like, and then I kind of like had to email her. I kind of bugged her again. So thank you very much for your patience.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Not a problem. No,
I
thank you.
read my emails and then I assume I'm going to get back to them, and they immediately get buried in other things. So I'm glad Taki's there. It's one of the things we help each other out a lot.
Oh yeah. But Mike, I know, because I'm a little bit behind on some of my emails too. But you're not the only one.
I think we all fall under that category.
Yeah.
I do too, actually. So yeah.
All right. Now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader who loves mythology, who loves, fantasy stories, please check out the After Realm Kickstarter. Now, the campaign is currently underway and will end on Sunday, October 2nd. Now, I'm also going to add this as well too. I've already read the first 4 issues. I love it. Mike, and I'm gonna say Taki, you guys pour your love out in this series. It really shows. Listeners, as we, when you read the After Realm, I mean, literally, like I've said, it hooked me in. Already on page, I can't remember, 3 or 4, I'm going, oh my God, the troll that's holding the Tommy gun. It reminds me of an image from the Wizard. So all these subtexts, it kind of pulls you in, and it subtly pulls you in, and it's great.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Mike. Thank you thank you very much. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Drew, the Codes of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
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 Jason's always asking who his next interview should be. As you guys know, he does a fantastic job of reaching out to these creators, their publicists, their publishers, various people coordinating these interviews and sharing them with us. And we appreciate it very much. But he's always trying to do more. He's always asking for the right mix to reach out for. So I'm opening it up to you guys. Just share on our social media. platforms. Send us an email. Let us know who you want us to interview, what your dream interview people are, or up-and-comers you'd like to hear from. Jason only has so many hours in the day, and he has quite a schedule, but he'd love to hear your thoughts and any other feedback you have on the interview episodes. Thanks again for listening. We appreciate it.